Lamar Jackson, 26-year-old former MVP. Obviously, it's been an interesting offseason, to say the least, for Lamar Jackson. He's on the non-exclusive franchise tag with the Baltimore Ravens. And I know recently you wrote for VSiN.com, and others have wrote as well in the media space, about a team that has not been talked about with Lamar Jackson that may be interested in acquiring him. And that's the Indianapolis Colts, who right now pick 4th overall. Why do you think it makes sense for Indianapolis to get into the Lamar sweepstakes and potentially land themselves a bona fide starting quarterback?
You know, I wrote this, and I was reminded of a principle called Occam's razor, which is when two things are similar, take the simplest one. And to me, that principle fits this conversation because, look, I understand, and I don't disagree. You ideally would like to get a quarterback and build a team around a rookie contract. I get that. Everybody gets that. I heard Russo tell your boy Danny O that yesterday, you know, and he was anti-Lamar. And for reasons of which, again, I'm doing this in the barbershop, so I'm reading it. I'm looking at the they had the closed caption on.
There you go.
So, and Russo's telling them that, you know, Lamar didn't play well in the postseason, which is true. You know, and Danny O said, well, he had 7 drops. Okay, yeah, all right. They got behind 14-0. Well, do you think that bothered Dan Marino? You think that bothered Elway? Like, Elway was behind and had to lead a drive. Like, oh, come on, stop with that nonsense, please. Anyway, all valid points by Russo. But to me, why I think the Colts are the right fit is because they're not going to get one. They're not going to get a proven player. They have cap room. They have a decent team. They do not have a bad team. He would elevate their players to another level. He would make Taylor better. He would make Pittman better. He would make their tight ends better. He would make everybody better. And I don't know where they're going to find a solution. You're picking 4. You can't get to 1. I don't think Nick's going to give up 2, right? So you can't trade up. And you're going to have to figure out, how do you win the AFC South if you don't have one? I mean, I like Gardner Minshew, but he's a backup. You know, so I think, to me, if you're Chris Ballard and you're Jim Irsay and you're sitting there saying, look, you know, we've got $20 million of cap room. We have a young team. We're going to do a good job of drafting. Let's go get ourselves a blue chip player, because the draft capital doesn't allow us to get there. They have been spoiled by luck, right? No pun intended here, right? They've been spoiled by, they get the first pick in the draft, and there's Peyton Manning waiting for it at their doorstep.
Yep.
Manning gets hurt and they bomb completely, and they get Andrew Luck. I mean, that's serendipitous. It's like the San Antonio Spurs being able to get Robinson and Duncan. You know, it's just it's serendipitous. You're just fortunate. So you don't have that luck this year. You don't. And so where are you going to get one? Where are you going to get a quarterback? They didn't want Garoppolo. I don't blame him for not being in the Rodgers thing. He doesn't fit for what they want to do. Here you get a 26-year-old quarterback who could come in and run the 6-back offense, which Steichen runs completely, runs it. He'll run it better than probably what even Jalen Hurts ran it. I know Philly fans don't get mad at me, but Lamar's better than Hurts.
Yes. I think there's no debate with that. Like, Lamar Jackson, I don't know if it's because he's been hurt at the end of the last 2 seasons, but it feels like he's almost become underrated, where people are forgetting how good of a player this guy is. Like, he wins and he's productive. Now, the interesting part of this, Michael, is that there's a report that came out that representatives who are not certified by the NFLPA have contacted multiple teams on behalf of Lamar Jackson. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because Lamar, of course, does not have the agent. And they're saying that Lamar is not hell-bent on having a fully guaranteed contract. I'm not sure if you've heard the same or what you have heard as the latest of what Lamar is seeking, but if Lamar doesn't want the fully guaranteed, I feel like that brings more teams into the picture and maybe even makes it trickier for the Ravens to even get rid of him. Maybe the Ravens said, hey, well, if you don't want a fully guaranteed, we want to keep you and we want you to be our quarterback.
I think the Ravens are at wit's ends with this. I get the sense that the Ravens are, not going to say this publicly, but I get the sense that the Ravens want to change. They want to move on. They're tired of the drama.
It's a Packers-Rodgers situation.
I'm not saying it's quite there, but I think they're tired. I don't think he wants to sign back there, and I think that they're frustrated with the overall dynamics of the negotiation. And the good thing about if you work for the Ravens is the owner, Steve Bisciotti, he's involved here. So if he says, look, I'm done with Lamar, it's not on you as the general manager. So, like, okay, we're done with Lamar. That means we may take a giant mother may I step backwards, and this might be a little bit of a rebuild. There's a great line George Young used to tell everybody, the former general manager of the New York Football Giants. He said, always guard your desk. Meaning, don't let somebody take your desk, somebody take your job, and when you trade away a guy like Lamar, you could lose your job.
Yep.
And I think with the owner on your side, you can't. If I were Chris Ballard, I would get on one of Jimmy Irsay's private planes, and I would fly down and see Lamar and spend time with Lamar. Because he's a free agent. You can do that. And you and Shane Steichen, that's all you need, just two people. If Jim Irsay wants to come along, go ahead.
You don't need 14?
You don't need 14. You can take a Piper Cub down there. You don't need to take a big plane, right? And you can go down there and, let's talk about building a relationship here together about where we want to go and what's your vision and what's our vision. Because this is a partnership, right? The whole guarantee thing, I think, is completely misrepresented. So, like I wrote about, if Lamar would have done the $144 million 3-year deal that he reported, if that's accurate.
133, yep.
Was it 133? Okay, 133 for 3 years. That you could have easily guaranteed the whole thing because he's going to play for 3 years. He's going to play for 4 years. He's going to get his money. It's like when the Broncos guaranteed McGlinchey's first year. Well, he's going to get paid. You just signed him the signing bonus. Of course, his first year is going to be guaranteed. It's just so semantical. I think to me, if I were Ballard, I owe it to the organization as the protector of the future. I owe it to the organization to fly down and explore this situation. I owe it to go spend time with the mother, spend time with the kid. And I'm not talking about a 1-minute interview. I'm talking about look, let's go out to dinner. Let's have a meeting the next day. Let's go out to dinner again. Let's kind of work our way through this if we think we can be compatible.
Get to know each other.
Right. I owe it to the organization's future to do that, because if I don't do my due diligence on that, how do I solve the problems moving forward?
And if you're Chris Ballard, I know I was talking with Elliot, our producer. He's a big Colts fan. We were talking about it before the show started. There's a lot of urgency for Ballard to make a move because his seat is pretty hot out there in Indianapolis. And he's working for an owner in Jim Irsay who wants a quarterback. An owner in Jim Irsay who, by the way, if you look at his likes on Twitter, liked a tweet referencing the Colts being a possible destination for Lamar Jackson. So he clearly is in the, hey, we need to find some sort of a bona fide option. We're done with the guys on their back nine and the veteran guys. We need to find whether it's a young veteran like Lamar or one of these rookies. They're kind of boxed out with the rookies because Carolina made the move up to 1. Houston, we believe, is going to take a quarterback at 2. So at the best, you're going to get the third best quarterback on your board, or maybe everyone has them ranked differently, but you're going to get the third option, though, is what I'm saying.
And there's no guarantee on that third option.
And there's no guarantee. So the urgency is there to where, hey, Baltimore, if they want to move on, there's urgency there. And if the Colts want to get a guy, there's urgency that maybe this could be a perfect situation.
I think what the Rams have taught us is they don't give awards out for the salary, winning the salary cap, right?
Bingo.
And I think your job, if you're Chris Ballard, is to protect the cap, but also to win. And so even though you don't want to build a team around a quarterback that you have to pay a lot, you really don't have an option here. You don't, because you're going to have a team, you're going to have a good team with no quarterback, you're going to get fired. That's just fact. And so if you win 7 or 8 games, it's not going to be good enough. Whereas, and I know that you look at Minnesota and you see the Minnesota situation and you say, okay, they ended up getting Kirk Cousins and it's really destroyed their franchise, but they've won a lot of games. Now they've changed coaches too. I mean, Zimmer was the guy behind trying to get them. I just feel like, to me, this deserves to be explored. If you're an Indianapolis Colt, you can't sit there in your office in Indianapolis and say, I'm not interested. If you don't do you got to go and get the facts yourself. You got to meet the kid. Mm-hmm. And I think, to me, the other thing, I've always wanted to do this in my career, and it never happened. I wanted to be a GM of a dome team because I felt like that gives you a unique advantage, because the crowd noise in the dome, if you built a size-speed team inside a dome, you could be really disruptive. And I think one of the things that killed the Colts under the Bill Polian administration was they were an undersized team in a dome. So when they went outside, they weren't very effective. I wanted to do the opposite, build a size-speed team in the dome that could play outside. And I think if you put Lamar inside a dome on perfect conditions with his speed and quickness and acceleration, I think you could be deadly. And then you have Steichen. Why did you hire Steichen? Why hire Steichen? I mean, I know why you hired him over the Saturday in the park, but why hire Steichen? I mean, why not pick Martindale if you're just going to be stuck on this program?
Yeah.
You know, you hired Steichen because you want to develop a quarterback. Well, who's he developing? Who's he going to develop? Are you going to go all in on Anthony Richardson? I think he's tremendously talented. Do I think it's a proven commodity? No, I don't.
No. It's like you'd rather risk your job on Lamar Jackson than Anthony Richardson
I would.
at this point. The last point here on this conversation that I want to get to, because we talked about it last podcast, how deadlines make deals, and you think that this Rodgers-Jets thing will get done before the draft. What do you think the timeline is like for Lamar? Do you think this was before the draft, or could it happen maybe after the draft?
Somebody sent me an Instagram message yesterday saying that it's a better chance to get done in 2024, 20. No, I mean, if he either gets done now or, I mean, next year, if he doesn't play under a contract, the Ravens have to be really nervous about if he gets injured, is he going to come back? We saw that already. Mm-hmm. And then do you extend him out another year on a one-year deal? Their cap is so tied up because of this. They can't really improve their team. I think at the end of the day, you know, they either want to do a long-term or they want to trade him. I think those are the two things. I think if Chris Ballard were to call up Eric DeCosta and say, Eric, I'll give you my 4th pick overall in the draft, that's it, he would say, go fuck yourself, Ballard, and hang up the phone, and then he would go back and think about it and think about it and think about it and think about it, and then call back and say, well, if you got to throw something else in. Mm-hmm. Because he's got to make that decision. Either I extend him or I trade him. It's nearly not that complicated.
Yeah, you can't really play in this.
No, you can't wait for 24, 20.
Stuff,
you just can't. It gets too expensive. It's hard to carry.
Yeah, and that franchise tag, it's like if you get tagged 2 years in a row, it's much more punitive to kind of deter teams from doing that to guys
Plus,
year after
what are you
year.
Dealing with the player? Maybe he comes in with an attitude that you don't really want to deal with. I mean, it's not easy.
No, it could be the right time for these teams to go their separate ways and turn over a new chapter for the Baltimore Ravens. I know for Ravens fans, it probably sounds hard to hear taking a step back, but that's probably what's needed. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, and for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.